Hello and welcome to another Parentline podcast. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing Sarah Wright from Advice Space. We discussed all things to do with financial worries, maximising income, reducing your outgoings. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to the Parentline podcast, where we discuss the joys and challenges of modern parenting and explore how we as parents can give our children the best start in life.
Sarah, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and Advice Space, please?
Yes, Advice Space is a charity and we provide free, impartial, non-judgmental, independent advice to the public on a range of issues. So things like social security benefits, housing, employment, consumer, education, immigration, and of course money and debt. We've worked with a number of partners. I'm sure you'll recognise them: Cedar, Chest, Heart and Stroke, Macmillan, Positive Life, Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and then the Belfast City Council, Belfast Trust and Department for Communities. In the last year, we've supported about 45,000 clients and we've generated about 6.8 million in income for those clients. So that's money that goes directly back into their back pockets. And then obviously since March, we've all been working from home. And I must say the team has really adapted well to providing remote advice. But I am looking forward to getting back to the office and seeing clients face to face when it's safe to do so.
Yeah. And in terms of, we're in January now. How do people find themselves with money worries? How does that happen?
I think 2020 in particular has been a really tough year for families with children off school, parents struggling working from home, childcare costs, having to self-isolate, care for elderly relatives. While some people are saving money on things like their commute, heat and electricity costs will have increased with people working from home. A lot of our calls recently have been related to the financial impacts of COVID. So if illness itself, self-isolation, furlough, redundancies and bereavement. And it's these dramatic changes in circumstances which can push people into poverty and destitution. So since March, we actually have seen a 1,208% increase in redundancy queries. So that sort of exemplifies what people are dealing with at the moment.
Yeah. And in terms of, does family situations have an impact on income as well? If you're married or if you're single, what impact does that have?
Yeah, say in a relationship, a partner has a different approach to money. They have a different approach to spending, different approach to saving, or one partner maybe has poor credit history, or the relationship has broken down. And all of these can cause money issues and concerns. And now with COVID, families are facing job losses, time off work to self-isolate and dramatically reduced income. So it is vital to seek help if people are struggling to manage or if it is beginning to impact on those relationships. Nothing good can come from avoidance or sticking your head in the sand. Talk to each other, talk to your families, seek help. There's advisors like myself. There's debt specialists, there are relationship counsellors, and you don't need to deal with those money worries alone. We do know since March, the rates of domestic violence have increased, and of course, financial control or abuse is a form of domestic violence. So if a partner was limiting access to funds and bank accounts, if you have to account for every penny spent out of an allowance, if you're prevented from working, or if a partner or family member is taking out loans and credit cards in your name without consent, financial abuse, it's one of the most powerful methods of keeping a victim trapped in an abusive relationship. And I would say if somebody, if those scenarios ring true, if somebody is being financially controlled, they can contact the Domestic and Sexual Violence Helpline free. And that's 0808 802 1414. And they will believe you and you will be supported. And just in terms of dividing income as well, if a relationship has broken down, certainly our advisors can help with that and talk about what benefits you may now be entitled to as a lone parent or as a single person. There's a lot of support out there for people.
I have to say, I'm not sure if it's just within families or whatever, or everyone feels this, but a lot of people actually feel embarrassed about talking about money. So what advice would you offer them in terms of trying to start that conversation, especially if they do have money worries or they have concerns?
I think the healthiest way to talk about money is to discuss it regularly as a priority. so that when those issues do come up, that habit of creating a safe space between relationships, couples, families, it's already established. You don't have to wait for that serious situation, which needs urgent action to open up. Mm-hmm. Everyone has money worries, myself included. Even families who look like they have it all together, it is normal. When it becomes an issue is when it's minimized or when it's avoided, or if someone is being financially controlled. Mm-hmm. And actually the Money Advice Service, they have a really, really good section on their website. It's called How to Have a Conversation About Money. And that's something that I actually use myself. That's what I would refer clients to, just for that, that information on how to have a conversation with an elderly relative about their money, how to have a conversation with a partner. I'm not really sure what is being taught in school nowadays, but I do think it's vital that schools teach money management.
Yeah, I guess that was one of the sort of questions I was going to ask you. At what age should parents be talking to their children about money? And what advice could you offer them? What should they be thinking about? Should they be giving them pocket money? That kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think schools can be supporting families to do that. So, schools can help support parents to role model those financial discussions, budgeting, saving, reaching out for advice, because very often if there are unhealthy ways of coping with money, that can filter on down to children as they grow up. I think it's important to remember there's always something new to try. So it may well be that schools are teaching kids something that we should have learned back then. And, it's good to have that two-way conversation, because the way young people manage money now is very, very different. Pocket money now could be a PayPal account. It could be, it could be, it's very, very different. So I think it's important to have that two-way conversation, and parents know their children better than anyone. So deciding when those conversations should start, it's up to the parents really, but with that school support. And what works for one family may be very different for another, and that's okay. When we advise clients, and I'm sure this is exactly the same for Parentline, we consider each family's individual circumstances. And I think that's very, very important when discussing money and some of the shame and stigma that can come from having money worries.
Yeah, I mean, I think, because it is January and stuff, and we've just felt the pressure of buying presents and stuff for Christmas. So if there is a parent that is listening to this podcast and they do feel that, it's coming to the end of January, they're finding it difficult to pay their bills, what help is there for them? Specifically, if they've got an electric bill in and they're thinking, my goodness, where do I get the money for that?
Well, at Advice Space, we provide clients with benefit checks to ensure they're accessing their full entitlement and maximising their income. Some clients may well be entitled to payment holidays, and I know mortgage holidays have been quite widely publicised.
Okay.
You can also get those for car finance. There is specific help as well from electricity and gas suppliers.
Okay.
So they don't want to cut you off, so if you let them know there's an issue or that there could be an issue shortly, if you know you're being made redundant, for example, they can help you to top up the meter for a week or 2 weeks, but it's important to let them know, and they'll try and work with you to find a resolution. It is worth avoiding payday loans. They can seem like a quick, easy solution if somebody's had a dramatic change of income, but they can lead to serious debt. And there are other alternatives. So if you've been in touch with an advisor, but you still need to borrow money and you're on a low income, there is something called discretionary support, and that can provide financial help. So they can provide interest-free loans, they can provide grants to cover living expenses, and they can also provide those grants to replace essential household items. So if someone's fridge breaks down, or they need a new bed or a new carpet, for instance, and there is for those who are self-isolating due to COVID, and I'm sure with the rates at the moment, there may well be more people self-isolating, you can apply for a self-isolation grant, and that doesn't have to be repaid. You can also apply if you are applying for universal credit, for example. You could apply for a contingency fund grant or an advance payment loan. And it's very important that, the loan would have to be paid back. So you can ask for the contingency fund grant. It's very, very important to seek advice before applying for universal credit, because a lot of families with children would have been on tax credits or other benefits. And as soon as you apply for universal credit, those benefits stop. So, and you could end up worse off. So it's very important, to get that independent advice before starting a new universal credit claim.
Yeah, it does sound very complicated. I mean, is a lot of that provided though through the Department for Communities? Is that?
Yes. So it's
Yeah.
the Department for Communities that provide things like discretionary support, the contingency fund grant, self-isolation grant. But it's certainly something we can help people apply for. Certainly something we can help people, get an understanding. Are they eligible to apply? But it is not the case that you have to already be on benefits to apply for these things.
Right.
You can get them when you're working. You can get them if you're on furlough, if you're made redundant, etc. So it's not just, they aren't for me. These benefits are there to help everybody in their time of need.
So if someone phones Advice Space up, then you go through everything with them in terms of what their circumstances are, and then you would let them know what is out there for them. And how do you apply for it, or do you help them apply? How does that work?
Well, it really depends. It depends on what the client prefers. Because of COVID, we do have a bit more leeway in terms of making those phone calls without the client present. And if they perhaps have put ourselves down as their representative on a file, but we can fill in forms, even though we're working from home. We have a process for that. That's no problem. We can still fill in forms. We can still make phone calls for clients, and we can still obviously signpost clients. If clients are able and willing to make those calls themselves, we can pass on the numbers. It's given that holistic approach of, this is everything that you could get and this is how you could apply. I think it's hard to take that first step in reaching out, but, really the emotion most of my clients would feel is relief that somebody understands that they need a bit of support and they know how to get that.
Yeah, I mean, that is so helpful. I didn't realize that about all the additional benefits. I thought you had to be, on benefits to be able to access. That's fantastic. Thank you. If a person is in debt and new year, they have decided, right, it's time to get my finances in order. Is there any apps or is there anything that can help them do that?
So there's a number of ways to help people sort of get back on track. Firstly, as I've said, maximising that person's income, reaching out to the advisors at Advice Space, making and sticking to a budget, analysing your expenditure. It's hard to change something if you don't know what it is you're spending your money on. And then reducing your monthly outgoings if that's something that you want to do, and then utilising savings accounts. And obviously, if you're worried about debt in particular, we can certainly put clients in touch with specialist debt advisors.
Yeah, that is brilliant. One of the other questions I wanted to ask you was about money management and budgeting skills. Some people don't really know where to start, especially if they want to get their finances in order. What would you advise them is the first step to do that? And is there any courses or workshops that they can attend to help with that?
So I think the first step really is increasing the person's income. You hear a lot about food banks, and really that person just needs money. That's sort of the mantra, is that actually if we give that person the money, if they have more money, then they could buy their own food, and have that dignity. But certainly things like checking you're on the right tax code could increase your income, asking your employer for more hours, although I understand with the pandemic that may not be possible. Obviously, as I've said before, about doing these full checks with an advisor to ensure you're receiving everything you and your family are entitled to. And this applies to people in work and out of work. You may be eligible for help with childcare costs, rent, with mortgage interest. If you're currently receiving something like housing benefit or universal credit and they're not paying enough to cover your rent, we can help clients apply for something called a discretionary housing payment, and that can help bridge the gap. Clients may be entitled to rate relief, whether they're renting or whether they own their own house. And if somebody's on a low income, they could be entitled to help with health costs. And that doesn't sound like much, but that would cover things like eye tests for the whole family, glasses, vouchers, dental checkups, treatment, traveling for treatment. If somebody has to go for cancer treatment and maybe they're there 3 times a week, every week, that can add up. It could be that you are eligible to receive carers allowance because you're caring for relatives or friends impacted by COVID or other disabilities and health conditions. And then if somebody is living with a disability, they could be eligible to receive things like contributory-based employment and support allowance, universal credit, and personal independence payment. Now, we do know that those that receive disability benefits at the end of this month are going to get a £200 heating grant to help with, obviously, the extra costs of being in the house more during the pandemic.
Is that an automatic payment? Will
Yes.
that come out, or do you need to apply?
Yes, that's an automatic payment. So anybody that's on those disability benefits, obviously they're receiving a monthly income. It will just come through the same way at the end of the month. If you have been keeping your heating payments going okay, you can use that money for your electricity, or can you use it for food. So it's not sort of earmarked that it can only be used to heat your home. I know that there are about 1,354 families who have lost loved ones due to COVID, and those families and anyone who has suffered a bereavement could be entitled to a bereavement support payment or a funeral grant to help with funeral costs, because that can be a major expenditure even at the best of times, and just in addition to all of that, there are savings accounts that people can access. So there's something called a Help to Save account, and you can access that if you are receiving tax credits or universal credit.
Okay.
And the way it works, it stays open for 4 years, the account, and the government gives you 50% tax-free on top of the highest balance after year 2 and year 4. So you can pay in between £1 and £50 a month. So say you put in the maximum of £50, at the end of year 2, you'll have saved £1,200, and the government will give you an additional £600. And then if you continue to save £50 a month at the end of year 4, you'll have saved £2,400, and the government will give you a bonus of £1,200. So that's £3,600.
Wow.
So it's a substantial amount of money, and it's very, very good rates, and it is open to people on tax credits or universal credit, which would be quite a lot of families with children.
That's staggering. I think what I'm getting from us talking is there's so much out there that there is a lot of help for people, but my question is, how does someone find out about this if they don't know what they don't know? That they're a little bit embarrassed about going to an advice service because they think maybe it's just about being in debt. How do we reach more people to tell them about this? And hopefully this podcast will do that as well.
I think just being open about these discussions about money, recognizing that everybody has money issues, everybody has money concerns, everybody may not be in debt, but they may have student debt, which it's still debt, or a mortgage or arrears, or all it takes is for someone to be made redundant, and overnight your circumstances have drastically changed. So I think it's on all of us to support each other. I
mean, I think people understanding that they don't have to be in debt, or there has to be a major crisis before they phone a helpline like yourselves or even Parentline. And, if parents call us, we can certainly refer them on as well. I mean, that is such a valuable piece of advice, Sarah. Thank you so much.
I do think actually as well, Ellen, you can phone for advice before something happens. So say you're toying with the idea of going down to 16 hours, or starting to claim childcare costs, or you're considering having another child, or any of these life circumstances that can be thrown at people. You can ask for what would happen if. So if this happened, what would I receive? So that would be a lot of the calculations I would actually do for people. It's sort of a comparison. Okay, how am I better off? Am I better off doing this or this? Am I better off working more hours, but then I have to pay more childcare? So you can give actual figures so that people can make an informed choice about what to do.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful. I actually didn't realise that myself, so thank you. Sarah, could you tell me a little bit about how people can reduce their outgoings each month?
So I suppose in order to manage financially and in a sustainable way, it can help to work out your income and expenditure, create a realistic budget, and reduce monthly outgoings. And a budget is only an estimate of what your income and expenditure is likely to be, whereas recording your actual spend gives you a really clear picture of where your money is going each month. It allows you to evaluate what expenses are a priority and what can be reduced. So if you're considering making a purchase or signing up to a new service and you're financially stable, it could be worth asking yourself, do I need this? If money's tighter, you're on a low income, or you're in debt, it can be worth asking yourself, can I afford this? Is this a priority? And it can help to reduce the impact of major purchases such as oil heating. It can be quite expensive. Belfast City Council actually has a Stay Warm fuel stamp scheme, which helps families save for oil by collecting stamps on a savings card.
Okay.
And so the stamps are £5 each, and you can use them to pay for all of your oil or part of it. And there's also online saving schemes, such as Boiler Juice, where you can save regularly by direct debit, just as and when you're able. And once you're ready to order, you get the quotation, you get the cheapest price from all the suppliers, and then they're bundled with other people in your area. So it makes it even cheaper. And then there's actually some really, really good resources on the Consumer Council website. There's a gas and electric energy comparison calculator. And there's also information on average prices for oil heating and a fuel price checker, and a variety of guides on reducing your outgoings. And it helps people to understand, look, am I actually paying too much? Could I be moving to a different supplier and reducing my outgoings? And there are some other ways actually as well. So things like, because a lot of people now have more subscriptions for things like Netflix, Amazon, Disney, that sort of thing, especially for the kids, and I think one of the ways that can help is, instead of thinking about it, it's $8.99 a month or $9.99 a month, well, actually that's about £120 a year. Is that worth it? Or even things like a gym membership, that can be £40 a month on average, and that's £480 a year. Whereas local council gyms or other gyms may offer cheaper memberships or pay as you go, so you're not tied into a membership on a rolling contract. I mean, I made the mistake a few years ago of paying for gym membership for a year without going. So we can all make mistakes when it comes to money. Yeah. And then, even things like, is there a better tariff to be on my mobile phone? So you can look at things like your usage and see, okay, I only use 3 gigabytes of data a month. I really don't need to be paying for 15, to say, am I wasting money? Do I need this? Even things like, do I upgrade my phone this year, or do I wait? And say you wait another year, you could be saving something like £500 just by keeping that phone one more year. And you can actually save substantial amounts of money and reduce waste on your weekly food shop. So things like switching to own brands in supermarkets, creating a shopping list for each trip, cutting out, those impulsive purchases, meal planning in advance can really help save money. And I know certainly for myself, I found meal planning and using Click and Collect. If I use Click and Collect, I am a lot less likely to throw a few things into the trolley. Yeah. Exactly. So I stick to the list. And even things like building up reward points. You could build up reward points throughout the year and then use them to help with Christmas.
I have to say, Sarah, I love building up the Boots ones and then spending it at Christmas.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I do the same with the Sainsbury's Nectar. So I do that, and then I do wee surveys throughout the year, and that gets me a wee bit extra, and it just helps, doesn't it, at that time of year? But there's lots of ways that people can reduce those outgoings. It don't take too much effort, and a lot of the and it's just a case. Obviously, I understand people can be financially struggling, but also they may not have the time, and that's where these resources that I'll mention come in, because it's already been done. The comparisons are there, you can see clearly, and then you can make an informed decision about, do I want to keep that service? Do I want to keep going to that specific supermarket when they're dearer than somewhere else?
Yeah, I have to say, that I love nothing more than phoning up my broadband provider and my insurance, car insurance, and saying, well, I've seen a better deal elsewhere. Can you match it or better it? And it's brilliant. It is really, really good to get your outgoings.
It's like an instant gratification of, I've just saved myself loads of money.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. So you talked about the resources. So can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so the Money Advice Service, they have a money health check online. So that can give you an idea of where you stand with your finances. It can give you some tips and advice on money management, as well as guides, as I mentioned before, about how to talk to others about money. There's also some great resources to help with budgeting, in addition to the Consumer Council tools that I've mentioned already. So they have an online budget planner, and then the Housing Rights website as well have great budgeting tips. And then there is a regular newsletter that you can sign up to from Money Saving Expert. And not all of it's relevant to here, but in terms of budgeting and saving and just managing your money, I've learned things from those emails that I didn't even know. Better ways to save, better ways to manage debt, and certainly you can use those. But I would do that in addition to speaking to an advisor, because it's always good to have that sort of that sounding board of, I'm thinking of this, or I'm not sure about this, and someone, can help.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say I have signed up to the Money Saving Expert one, but sometimes I think a lot of the stuff is very mainland GB centred.
Yes. Yeah.
So I suppose that would be how it would be different for people in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of offers they have, which are shops that we don't have here. So, you can take, the snippets that are relevant, and understand that, okay, some of it won't be. Obviously the online stuff would probably still be relevant for here. But I do like getting the email and saying, oh, that looks good. Why haven't I tried that? And saying,
I think what's brilliant about it is the little tips and tricks to, get £100 worth of beauty products for £40.
Yeah, I know. I love, and they had some great ones. They had a whole section before Christmas on like tips and tricks for when things would go on sale at Christmas. So you could plan when you were buying things in advance. I thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, they are good. They are good. And I never buy anything unless I have a discount code, by the way.
Yeah. Or even things like cashback. There are like apps you can get, where spending your norm. So you're not spending anything extra. You're not buying anything extra for the household, but you're getting cash back. So I know there's a number of retailers that we would all like Primark, Boots, Holland and Barrett, things like that you can get cash back for just using your card on your normal expenditure.
Yeah, I have to say again, when I'm buying stuff online, I go through the cashback websites.
Yes.
And it's just that, you're already spending the money, so you might as well get a little bit back
exactly,
and use it at the end of the year. I think they're brilliant. Even if I have a Domino's pizza, I go through one of the cashback websites.
Yeah, I do the same with Just Eat.
What a luck. I like pen and paper, so I normally write down, what I spend things on. But I start at the beginning of the month, and by the end of the month, I've forgotten about it or whatever. Is there any apps that could help me track expenditure?
For both Android phones and iPhones, and mostly smartphones, really. There's a whole range of apps. There's loads that are free. So I would certainly recommend free ones first. I use one, it's called Bill Tracker. And I had an idea in my head of how much I was spending on things, but that is not the reality. So at least, every time I spend something, I put it in, whether I'm going to feel bad about it or not. I put it in and then I look at it every month. And it means before any issues arise, I already know, okay, do you know what? I spent too much money on food this month. I've maybe bought a couple of takeaways that are more than what I've budgeted. And it means you can get a handle on the issues before they arise. Like I did last year, I was spending too much money on my dogs, and I was spending too much money. What else was it? I think it was takeaways. It was like, so then I was like, do you know what? Once or twice a month, and that'll do. Because when you add it up over a year, but you have to know what it is you're spending money on, good and bad and indifferent, before you can really tackle it, and before you can, control it. And it also helps, like, I'll sit and talk to I'd be like, how much have you spent this month? And I like having those conversations about, learning from other people too. Like, how do you manage? What apps have you used? Do you have a good budget planner? And even things around Christmas. Like, it's the Consumer Council. They have a great one around Christmas time. And it's like Christmas budgeting, and it's fantastic. Yes. And that's, if you like pen and paper, it's a good one to use. Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah. I have to say, people always laugh at me because I start my Christmas shopping in the January sales.
Yeah.
Because I think
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Because I always think, because I have two teenagers, so they always want things that are a bit more expensive. So I look at sales, in January sales, the summer sales, and I buy a couple of things each month that means that when it comes to Christmas, I don't have to worry about, I need to buy this, that, or the other. So I've budgeted
well,
that
actually,
way.
I've decided, after reviewing my Christmas expenditure, I've decided that I'm going to set aside a little bit. So I may not buy the presents throughout the year, but I'll set aside the money for them, so that by the time Christmas comes, I'm not using essentially a whole month's wages to try and, buy the food and buy the presents and stuff. Yeah. And that can really help, things like building up your points and things like, and then using them as almost a treat for yourself at the end of the year, I think is brilliant. But yeah, I definitely want to start setting aside money, because I know how much I spend, right? So now I know how much I need to save for next year.
Yeah. Okay, so that is brilliant, Sarah. Thank you. So we've talked about how people can maximise their income. We've talked about how they can reduce their outgoings and what resources there are to help. I guess I just wanted to finish. If someone is in severe financial difficulties, they can't afford to pay back any loans or things like that, and they're concerned about bailiffs and someone calling to the door. Can you sort of talk a little bit about that and what options they have?
So firstly, I would really advise clients and families not to bury their head in the sand. The issue could escalate, it could get worse, but there are lots of options available. Clients come into me and they're, I'm so embarrassed to say this, and they say it, and it's really not the worst thing you've heard at all, because everybody has these issues. So obviously, as we've mentioned, the income maximisation would be a priority. And then a lot of people don't realise that they can receive PIP and work. So things like, challenging those myths and misconceptions, or that they can receive universal credit if they're working or self-employed. And then empowering clients to use those resources that are available to help them manage their money, so they aren't so overwhelmed. So say if somebody can't afford repayments on a debt, making sure that they speak to a debt specialist who can provide free advice. You really should never be getting debt advice that you have to pay for. And there's plenty out there that's for free. And, money worries and debt can have such a detrimental impact on our mental health and our relationships and our families. They can be overwhelming and isolating, but nobody has to deal with it alone. As I said, these dedicated advisors provide this help in all aspects of money management. I've had clients who wanted to find out how to open a bank account. I've had clients who they had a small pot of savings and they wanted to know their options, or clients who were really entitled to tens of thousands worth of benefits that they didn't know they could get. So I think, and we also, particularly at the moment, we do give out food bank vouchers and referrals for anybody who is struggling to put the food on the table. But, there are no bailiffs in Northern Ireland. So that is a good thing. That is something that I hope it stays that way, which means, they can't come out to your house. They can't come out and harass you. If that's the case, get in touch, speak to someone, speak to Parentline, speak to ourselves. It only becomes a problem the longer it's left sort of unresolved. It's particularly with things like the payday loans, they can really escalate and spiral. And then all of a sudden something you've taken out without maybe mentioning to a partner, then it becomes a real issue. Society does kind of put that pressure on people to, keep it to themselves. So you don't talk about that. When actually, why can't we talk about it? Why can't we say, actually, this is what I've saved money on, or this is, I'm struggling with this. What can I do about it? I would say if anybody is getting those feelings of feeling overwhelmed or feeling isolated or feeling like they want to keep it to themselves, don't. Just reach out and we can certainly support in any way we can for yourself and the rest of your family.
Yeah. Well, that is brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.